Grab 6 of these pallets next time you're in Dollar Tree, people. We're going to be using them to make a large pumpkin DIY for fall. And you're going to want to recreate this and put your own spin on it. First things first, we're going to need to attach all these little gems. So line them up so they look just like this. And then grab whatever you would like to attach them. I'm going to be using some popsicle sticks. That's what I like to call them. If you refer to them as crafter sticks or, you know, tongue depressors, you do you. But I'm going to call them popsicle stick. Then I cut different sizes off and they went flying, and then I went collected them. It's fine. I like to live dangerously, and it keeps my mind sharp with wonder when I don't know where they went. To attach all the pieces, I'm going to use some Titebond Quick and Thick and some hot glue. And I just took the larger sections of the popsicle stick and used 3 of those right down the center, and then I had like medium-sized pieces cut and used them in the larger intersection pieces that connected all of them, and then teeny tiny pieces on the other parts. Again, you can attach these however you would like. This is just how I went about it. I'm gonna make a brim for the hat, and I'm gonna use a paint stick for that. I never like that little edge on there, so I'm gonna bring on in our miter shears and just nip that sucker right on off. For our paint color, I'm gonna use pumpkin, and I'm actually gonna add a little bit of this Tuscan red. It is one of my favorite things to add to this pumpkin color. It gives us like, I like to call it like a moody orange. Okay. And then before I start painting everything, I take my water bottle and give a spritzy spritz all over the sections I'm going to paint. This really helps to move the paint around quickly and get in all those little sections. You can absolutely do this dry without any water. It's entirely up to you, but I was able to get this painted in less than 5 minutes. When it was dry, I grabbed some Mod Podge so we could apply a nice thick juicy layer all over to the top section where the hat is going to go, so we can do the iron on method with some decoupage tissue paper. Now I like to pop a nice thick layer and allow this to dry overnight. If you don't have that kind of patience, 3 to 4 hours, I let it dry naturally, and some people like to heat gun it. I don't do that. For the decoupage tissue paper, we're going to be using my TDS creative design called Scripts, and I just cut a little section out to size, and then it was time to bring on in the iron. I use this, you can use whatever iron you would like. I usually have this right next to my craft station, and I do turn mine all the way up. Make sure you grab you a piece of parchment paper, and it doesn't matter. I've used the shiny side, the non-shiny side. I get asked that often. Doesn't, I use whatever. Okay, just put the parchment paper down. And then I'll start from one side and work my way over to the next. And I spend some time ironing on the piece. I like to do a good 5 minutes, people, like really taking my time going over, making sure it's melted on here. And a good way to check I like to share is to pull up everything. Like you can see, I'm literally pulling this off the table to show you how adhered this is to the top of these pallets. I painted the paint stick black. Just, you know, shove this in here so y'all seen. It's painted, it's drying. And then I grabbed my X-Acto knife. And let's bring on in the finger sander because we're gonna need that too. But I'm just gonna be using it around the edges. My preferred method to remove the excess in between is the X-Acto knife. And to get the excess off on the other side, I just cut on the very top and I grab it and hold it in place and then go down the opposite side. I used my Titebond Quick and Thick to attach the brim on our hat and then grabbed a pencil and started sketching out our face. Pumpkin faces are really fun and super easy. You're really just doing 3 triangles and then figure out how many teeth you want your smile to have. I decided to keep mine fairly simple, so this way if anybody wanted to recreate my smile at home, you seen we only needed 2 little bottom teeth. I thought that was super cute. But by all means, people, put as many teeth in your pumpkin smile as you would like. I felt like the hat needed a little something something extra, so I took this black piece of burlap and I frayed around the edges, and really love how creative this little piece turned out. Stencil decor piece. Grab one of Dollar Tree's chargers. Pick a stencil. Paint color. People, look how cute this little baby makeup sponge is. I'm about to go buy all the baby makeup sponges when I find out wherever they came from, because those were given to me. Taping this down with some painter's tape was a little difficult because there were some spots that were raised around the edges. So in an attempt to combat that, you'll notice as I take our little baby sponge with a smoosh of black paint on here, that I'm taking my hand and pressing it in different sections on the stencil as I go. This is just trying to press those gaps completely into our charger so we can minimize the paint smooshing underneath that stencil and causing a mess. Once this is all dry, if you want to put a layer of sealer over it, go right ahead. I absolutely love how creative and gorgeous this turned out, and it was super easy to do. Next time you're in Dollar Tree, head on over to the Crafter Squares section and grab one of these wall decor pieces and one of these little pallet box pieces. Well, really, grab two of these joints because we're going to be making a fall pumpkin decor centerpiece. Listen, people, I know you're doubting me right now, but just roll on with me. The end result's going to shock you. To start off, we're going to need to nip the tip off of these and make them flat. So this way they sit flush on the table. Now, to do that, I'm going to bust out the big gun. If you got yourself a little craft table saw, by all means, use that. But anytime I can bust this joint out, I make it happen. Now, a little piece did go flying off of there. One piece is good. So, I mean, I was like, you know what? We'll wing it. It'll be just fine. For our paint color, I'm going to take some of this Rust-Oleum textured spray paint. Now, you want to make sure you shake this up really well. And for my ASMR lovers, I got you. I am so pleased with the way that this textured spray paint turned out on these Dollar Tree pieces. You would never know that these were from Dollar Tree. And mine, the little pieces, another one flicked off. It's fine. Now we're going to need to bring on in the miter shears. I'm going to be using these to cut down our large paint sticks so we can create stems. Feel free to create a stem or use whatever bits you would like for your stem. This is just how I chose to go about it. And I will tell you, for the large paint sticks, this is not the easiest way. Use anything else to cut this. I don't know why I keep torturing myself. Oh, it's so rough on my hands. But here we are. I did get to the end result of two little paint stick bits and took some yarn to wrap them in. Again, feel free to use twine. You could use some nautical rope, whatever you would like to wrap fabric to wrap your pieces in. I just went with some yarn. I liked the cream color and thought it would look good with the textured paint. To attach our pieces, I'm just going to be using some tacky glue. I've had really a good experience over the years creating pieces and reselling them whenever it comes to taking fabric and attaching it with tacky glue. I know that it's going to give me that good lasting hold. So I just put a nice generous amount on our pumpkin here and then smushed the stems in place. Now for some added fuzzies inside, because, you know, things are a little wonky if you don't use hot glue to like hold it in place, I grabbed some of my little clamps and just clamped them down. And then I grabbed some messy moss because, I mean, it's fall. It's probably the only time of year I'm going to be using moss. So, I mean, I grabbed some and I placed it around our stem. One, it's going to kind of hide that disconnect And two, it just makes it a little bit more fallish. I grabbed some little sprigs of bits and then tore up some fabric to make a little messy bow. And you're welcome for the ASMR. There are a lot of ways you can create messy bows. I like to do mine one of two ways. One, pile them on top of one another. When I'm happy with the arrangement, I take a stapler and just staple everything together and then glue them down with my tacky glue. Or two, this method where I put a pile of tacky glue off to the side and I smush each individual piece into that pile and then press it on top of the other one and then tacky glue it on down to where we're sticking it. When I was happy with the messy bow, it was time to find us a button. Yes, I collect vintage buttons, for anyone wondering. And this is not all of them. I found some buttons that I felt matched and glued them in the center of our messy bow and then attached everything together. Absolutely love how this piece turned out. Grab some of these pallets, people. I don't know what you're waiting for. This is the time of year. I keep saying that. Fall. Okay, these pallets and fall, they go together. We're going to transform these two little pieces into a neutral rustic pumpkin. First up, we're just going to put them together. I've made tons of pumpkins out of these things, and usually I just use one. Today, we're going to make it a little chunky. We're going to add some tacky glue onto these, and then we're going to smush them together and grab some clamps. So this way we can set this off to the side for a couple hours to dry. Now at this point, people, the world is your oyster, or the crafting world, that is. You could absolutely paint it, you could decoupage it, you could do whatever you want. We, however, I want to get rid of them sides for a change. And to do that, I'm going to take one of my wood appliques from my website and we're going to trim this down. I just want to kind of cut it right in the middle. And to do that, we're going to bring on in the miter shears. I mean, at least the plan was to use the miter shears to cut this in half because truth be told, I've trimmed edges off my wood appliques often, you know what I mean? Nip the edges and stuff like that. I was confident for about 2 seconds that I could hit through the middle of it. But no. It absolutely didn't work out like that. I cheated and went outside and used the big old miter saw. So be warned that if you need to cut those, anybody getting them off my website, you're going to need some a lot stronger than miter shears. Now I'm just going to take my Titebond Quick and Thick and apply a nice layer on the back of these and then attach it right at the sides. Now I did nip the edges off of the florals so this way they weren't really sticking out of the top of our little pumpkin piece and everything was kind of flush. It wasn't perfect exactly, but it covered up our ends. I want to keep this little guy neutral, so I'm just taking some of my antique Waverly wax and applying a nice coat over the piece. And I'm using a baby wipe to spread it around, and I'm also spraying it with my water bottle to help move that wax around. When I had a nice layer covered, I then grabbed a tiny detail brush and continued going around the whole piece. I decided I wanted to give it that pumpkin-y shape and decided to kind of give it some shading. I created that line right down the center and then curved in around the edges and also made like a little divot in the bottom. When I was done, it looked like this. And then after it dried, I grabbed some white chalk paint and just dabbled a little on my finger and went over the whole thing, helping all those edges to really pop. You could use gilding wax, rub and buff, whatever you would like. Paint works just as well too. I even took the paint and went around where I did the shading as well and felt like I still needed something. So I grabbed some orange paint and blended that in with the white and the brown around all the sides to just kind of give it a little bit more of that pumpkin-y feel. And you can skip this part if you would like. It's just something I decided to add in here. My fingers were already a dirty mess, so I wasn't worried about another paint color. At this point, if you want to let this dry and then put a layer of sealer over it, you can. I was not sealing over this. I wasn't worried about it, but I did know that we needed to pick out the stem. Okay, so I grabbed a little jar of bits and popped out this little thingy, my bobber, and then grabbed my Type-On Quick and Thick, applied a layer on here, and then stuck some messy moss right around the top. I wanted to cover up those gaps some more, so I just utilized the moss for this end instead of the appliques. And at this point, I was going to leave it alone, but I couldn't help myself, and I went and found a stencil in my stash that I picked up years ago from Amazon, grabbed some of my texture paste, and popped a little pumpkin right on the corner. And off camera, I decided to also add a couple little floral pieces up at the top. I think these beauties are meant for Christmas, you know, with this little bow that we have on top here, but we're gonna transform this into a super easy pumpkin decor piece for fall. Listen, I'm really gonna need you to stop down me. I'm starting to feel some kind of way about it. Grab you some little mini pumpkins. These are from Dollar Tree. You pick whatever ones you would like to use. And then grab you some lace, grab you some fabric, completely up to you. I'm gonna pick burlap ribbon, and you could use regular burlap. Again, completely up to you. Take the idea and remix it for what works best with your decor. I'm just cutting a decent healthy size and then kind of smushing it, not to completely crimp up the piece, but to give it some disorganization. So as we're layering our fairy lights and our pumpkins in here, it looks a little bit better than just having some smoothed out ribbon swirls going on in here. Now, I did have to take a little tool to kind of push the fairy lights down and the pumpkins down, but this was just because the fairy lights were not staying and they're kind of stiff. But depending on the fairy lights that you use, you might not even have this problem. You might be able to just stuff your piece of glass and roll on with your project. Next, I'm grabbing some messy moss. And again, use whatever you would like. Use whatever color you would like. It's entirely up to you. I'm putting this on the top where we have that bow to kind of create a pumpkin feel on the top of this instead of it looking like a present. I thought this would create more of that pumpkin feel, and I put a decent amount on the top and then grabbed some little bits that I had in my stash. These are just some knob type things, some cork type things that I find whenever I'm thrifting or out at estate sales, and keep them in little containers. You can create your stem however you would like. I was going for that rustic industrial look with this piece, and I really think I nailed it. Turn these scrap wood pieces I cut up in different sizes into a set of pumpkins. For the stem, I cut these little square dowels up into different sizes. You could use these, you know, you can grab them from Dollar Tree, whatever, you know, put whatever stems you want. Since these are a set, we want them all to match, and I'm painting the backs of all of them black, and I'm using chalk paint and a little bit of water to just spread that out so it's not thick and chunky. Now it's time to bring in our napkin. Oh yeah, we are decoupaging these. Not all of them though, not the whole things, okay? I am not going to bore you. Instead, we're going to take this napkin and use it to incorporate all three of these into a set. If you've never decoupaged a napkin before, it's important to get all of them sneaky layers off the back. One of the easiest ways to do that is just to tear a corner, and it reveals the layers. Usually it's 2-ply. Sometimes if you're lucky, it's 1-ply. and then you pull it completely off. So this way, we're just going to decoupage the top layer. You're in for a treat today, people, because normally whenever I decoupage large pieces, I cut it up and do it in sections. For this one, we're going to do the sides, the front, and not the back, the top and the bottom. So we're going to also want to make sure, see this pretty blue? We're going to want to make sure that that is showing somewhere in each section that we put this napkin out. So we can mix up some colors to put on our little square that we have over here. This way, the front of that little square pumpkin piece that we're making matches the color that is on the napkin. I wanted these pieces to be a little rustic, so I wasn't worried about solid coverage, and I like wood grain showing through, you know what I'm saying? Now be mindful, people, because if you're doing this and flicking your paintbrush near something else that is solidly painted, oh no, sprinkly bits. Yeah, I was just painting careless and free, and the next thing I knew, I was like, there's little blue dots on my black paint. So I said I didn't want these painted, you know, wasn't worried about full coverage. I also took a paper towel and wiped back any excess paint. I did the same thing with this rosy pinkish mauve color, I guess you would call it, and wiped it back as well. This just revealed a little bit of those, you know, wood grains underneath. And then I wanted to add a little bit of distressing with some dark colors, just to really tie in all the colors that are in that napkin, to really bring our little set here together. For our application, we're going to be using Deco Art Decoupage with the mat and a fan brush. I found the center of the napkin that had a little speck of blue on it and went from there. Because I'm going to be wrapping the napkin around our brick, that's what it looks like to me right now, brick. I found the center of the napkin that I wanted with the blue, so this way that's going to pop and incorporate our little blue block here right on the front. And then I took my little sponge. If you guys are not familiar with me, I like to use little cut pieces of dry sponge to press down on the outside of napkins when I decoupage them. It will grab excess Mod Podge that seeps through and help prevent additional wrinkling and things like that. I also like to go with a less is more kind of style and do section by section. You, on a project like this, if you want to do the iron-on method, that would work amazingly. That is definitely going to give you the most flawless coverage. But again, I was going for a little bit of a rustic look here, so if there was some wrinkles, lumps, and bumps, I wasn't going to be mad about it. I do recommend you cutting your corners just a little bit, like how I'm doing here, and popping them out, and then just measuring, just like you would if, you know, you're kind of wrapping a present. Measure your corners and stuff like that. Make sure that it makes sense. So this way, as you're wrapping your napkin, you're pressing each side down that it's going to cover. You know what I mean? If you just go ahead and try to actually wrap the napkin all the way around, it's going to overlap, and I did not want that. And trust me, when you see the end result, this came out flawless. The seams all met up really nice, because you're also going to sand off any excess. And here's our little brick completely decoupage. So this is the only one that we're going to do the front and the sides and the top and the bottom. The back, again, remember, it's completely black. Now for our little pink one, we're just going around the outside with our napkin. We're going to do the top and on the sides. And remember, I'm trying to make sure I'm incorporating that blue, so this way it ties in together. So I am making sure that I am placing it in just the right particular spot. Oh, on a side note, for anybody that wants to decoupage raw wood, I want to let you know a huge tip. The edges where you cut are usually very porous, so you're going to need extra Mod Podge in those spots. Keep that in mind. Once these dried, I went ahead and sanded all the excess off, and I added some of that little wood grain popping through. If you want to paint around the edges of yours white so your napkin pops out more, you go right ahead, but I really wanted this napkin to look like it was blended into the wood grain, and this turned out perfect for me. It just looks like it's melted into the wood. I wanted to get a little artsy fartsy with the leaves, okay? So I grabbed me a page out of a little Dollar Tree book, and I cut out some little almond shaped leaf pieces. Then I cut little divots inside of the little leaves, so this way it gave it more of an authentic look to look like a leaf. And I thought that would just add to our rustic appeal. And I crinkled it up a little bit too. I was, you know, getting a little rough with our leaf here, you know, trying to just give it some character. And because I'm me, I'm like, let's add some Waverly Antique Wax, you know, to the edge. And then I was like, oh, too much. And it just was too much. Ow! I ripped my leaf. Of course I did. Of course I did. I decided to move on to our stems and also applied some Antique Waverly Wax to them while I had it out. And while they were drying, I brought in a stencil for us to apply a little raised stencil on the top with our wonderful Tim Holtz texture paste, okay? And it's always a good idea, if it is big enough, to tape your stencils down whenever you're doing a texture paste, because you really don't want anything smooshing underneath of that stencil. And I love this stuff as well because you do not have to do like a seamless coverage. It will have all kinds of textures and different looks and variations throughout it. I also gave our little blue pumpkin some love, and then I attached our stems and our little leaves using some hot glue and some tacky glue. To make sure these look really seamless, I did add a little bit of twine right around where the stem attached to our pumpkins. And in this reveal, they are sealed. I get asked that often, what do I seal over my projects with? A lot of times, if it is a craft like this, and I know it's not going to be in a heavily used area, I will happily take the very medium that I attached the napkin with and use that as my sealer. And I did the very same thing here. I just waited until the next day, so this way the napkin was completely dry and adhered to our surface. If you're looking for more fall inspiration, check out this video right here. And as always, people, thank you all so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. Until next time.